Have you ever been out driving and out of nowhere, this building catches your eye? And this building has this gigantic, colorful painting on it. If so, have you ever wondered, where did this come from? What was the artist's intentions? Well, what if I told you that works like this can be the results of more than just the efforts of one person, but the collective efforts of as many as 200 to 300 people? I've been creating works of community-driven public art in Philadelphia, cities around the country, and the world for 2 decades. I received my Bachelor's of Fine Arts at Tyler School of Art, and I made a choice to pursue mural making. I found purpose in creating works of public art by including people, rather than pursuing a life in the studio. For years, I honed my practice with Mural Arts Philadelphia by working in schools, prisons, shelters, and rehabilitation centers. And I've taken the lessons from working in those places and applied them to the outside world. These images are much more than these final moments that you see. They represent months, sometimes years, worth of hard work, collaboration, and engagement. And these days, it's not uncommon to see street art festivals in every major city. But the appeal of mural making has always been its ability to act as a conduit for relaying powerful stories in a unique way. In recent years, I've conducted consultation work in other cities, and I'm constantly fielding questions by students and other artists looking to demystify the process of creating public art. And I tell them the seed of my engagement lies in conversations, in interviews, and then art-making exercises. And during my information gathering, I follow a few rules for myself. Engage people with art making that's challenging for them, but fun and cathartic. And those exercises that we create, they also need to inform the design in some way. And when I'm interviewing people, be in tune to what they're saying and be receptive to the overarching themes in everyone's conversation. And finally, be without ego. Allow people the ability to evolve even my most precious concepts and ideas. I was once a visiting artist on the island of Maui creating a public art project, and I remember a feeling of being completely overwhelmed as an outsider artist in a culture that was rich in its own visual identity, and I had no idea how I could make an impact. But it became clear to me that with each conversation, people's positive opinions of one another were oftentimes rooted in their ability to be humble. And I heard it all the time. Who are you interviewing next? Oh, you're going to love talking to this guy. He's worked a lot of years on this subject, and he's humble. And it taught me that I need to take a step back, and I need to make sure I'm listening and give this project the room it needs to develop and grow organically. People say, artists live a life that's in the studio. They're insular, walled off. I mean, why does public art need to be inclusive? Why does it have to be different? Well, at the end of the day, this work exists in communities. And the people that live in those communities, they have a voice. But they need to know that their opinion has value, and it matters. The process of engagement that leads to a work of public art gives people a sense of ownership in the work. And the gigantic paint days that we have, these huge volunteer events that see so many people come and block large sections of the mural on cloth in just a short amount of time, they give people a sense of accomplishment and pride. Both of these things are vital to a project's success. And I find that murals are far less likely to be defaced if people feel that they have a proprietary sense of ownership over it. And it's not uncommon to see murals or to see communities gather to rally around and fight against development that might wipe out a mural that people see as a point of their identity now. Murals have the ability to relay powerful stories of struggle, loss, and trauma to an audience that may be unaffected or have a completely different point of view. These works seek to promote empathy and understanding in a world that can seem more divided than ever. And these effects are quantifiable. The Yale School of Medicine conducted a survey into Mural Arts Philadelphia's Porchlight program. Porchlight uses art as a vehicle for individual and community healing. Now, the study took place over 2 years in 3 different communities, and what they found was residents living within a mile of a newly installed mural reported an increased sense of collective efficacy, trust among neighbors, perceived safety, and the overall aesthetic quality of the buildings in their neighborhoods, and a decrease in stigma towards individuals with behavioral health and substance abuse challenges. Now, I've worked with Porchlight for the past 2 years. These 2 murals behind me, up top, Contemplation, Clarity, and Resilience, and the bottom, The Only Way Out is Through, are 2 projects I conducted during a 2-year residency at the Kirkbride Center. Kirkbride is an inpatient drug and alcohol rehabilitation program. I worked with about 20 people 1 afternoon a week, creating art and mural making exercises. By the end of my engagement, I reached over 250 different people. And I chose to connect with each individual during this time of positive momentum in their recovery, challenging them with personally rewarding art exercises. In this case, learning how to draw and paint a realistic self-portrait using a grid. Now, I found people came to me in the beginning with every excuse in the book about why they couldn't do this. But in the end, they couldn't believe. I mean, just in a few short weeks, they couldn't believe the results. I mean, look at that. These exercises were meant as a way to put our best selves forward out there into the world. And we thought about how we could transform our narratives, the stories of our lives. I found this work to be so personally rewarding, and it filled me with a renewed sense of purpose because each week we were witnessing transformations. You know, it wasn't uncommon to see new people in the class in their seats nodding off that afternoon. It was warm in there, but as the weeks progressed, as people slowly weaned themselves off of methadone, regained their sobriety, worked on themselves, connected with their peers, and participated in our group, we were witnessing these people become themselves again. When it came to the mural, one thing I should say, we got a great note from the center about 2 months in, and our class took place Fridays before dinner time, and the counselors started to notice a correlation between the start of our program and a noticeable reduction in incident reports that were piled up on their desks waiting for them when they got back on Monday. We were getting results. Now, when it came to the mural, the participants wanted the project to contain images that spoke to anyone struggling with addiction, but at the same time containing messages that appealed to anybody who might be going through trauma or loss and that they could relate to it. It was important that we show the variety of faces of people affected by addiction, getting across the idea to the viewer that this is a problem that transcends age, race, creed, or socioeconomic status. Now, I find that the most effective murals are designed on a macro and a micro scale. Murals should have a clear visual identity and be recognizable from a distance. But at the same time, they need to contain small details that draw the viewer in, new discoveries that warrant repeat viewings. And that's why, in addition to quotes and artwork from each participant and portraits, this mural contains 9 QR codes. QR codes are quick read codes that you can scan with your phone, kind of like a barcode. In this case, they lead to music and spoken word narratives by the participants in our class that they composed along with Kirkbride's music therapist, Pam Draper. I find the content behind the codes give people insight into the humanity behind the addiction. Now, QR codes are an effective way to connect the viewer to the process of engagement, the larger process that's behind the scenes. For me, it solved the problem of how I can keep a project relevant by refreshing the content behind the codes, giving people deeper insight into our process. It wasn't the first time I've used codes for this effect. In 2012, I created a mural called Family Interrupted, and it's about the process or the impact of incarceration on families. Initially, this was a project without a home, devised by myself and a group of men that were incarcerated at SCI Graterford Prison as a part of Mural Art's Restorative Justice Program. This group is made up of brilliant self-taught artists, and I had the pleasure of working with these men and teaching them and having them teach me twice a week for a decade. This program afforded these guys the ability to use their talents to devise ways to give back to their communities. This group of men, they're made up of mostly lifers, some of whom have started their sentencing at early as 16 years of age, many of whom in this photo have served 30 plus years of their incarceration. Now, speaking only for myself, those afternoons teaching with this group in that prison room made me forget about my surroundings. For just those moments, those afternoons, we were working together. We were artists in the studio, even if that studio was a maximum security prison. When it came to the project, we wanted to connect to families of the incarcerated and provide them a forum to have their stories heard. And in addition, widen our scope and go citywide and connect with people with varying degrees of interaction with the prison system. Now, to do this, we developed 12 mailboxes and we designed murals for them, placed them throughout the state, where people were doing a lot of waiting and thinking about the issue. Prison waiting rooms, public defender's office, Philadelphia City Hall, the main branch of the public library, and Eastern State Penitentiary, which is now a museum. Each box contained a pen and a pad of paper explaining our project with written prompts encouraging people to write. And we received hundreds of replies this way from people with a variety of experiences like we had hoped. When we were in the middle of this process, I often found myself wishing, man, I wish more people could be in these rooms and hear these stories from these families. I wish more people could read these mailbox submissions. You know, maybe then we could affect change or challenge people's preconceived notions of who an inmate is and who their family is and how they must feel. Hours of audio were cut up into clips, and mailbox submissions were transcribed and posted on the project website. It was then our challenge to connect people to this engagement. And that's why, in addition to writing and stories and images and drawings that comprise the design, this mural includes 22 QR codes that lead people to audio and resources. Now, installing this work gives me the ability to connect with interested passersby. I live for these moments when people realize that inmates and people struggling with addiction are also capable of producing work that looks like this. You know? Sometimes my own family would ask me, why am I doing this? I do this because this provides these people with a sense of restoration for their communities and for themselves. When I do this, I think about the capacity that people have to share deeply personal, tragic stories in the spirit of helping other people who've been going through the same thing. And I feel that I owe it to them to make sure that these stories continue in the work. When I do this, I think about the men in Graterford. Men who, with absolutely nothing at their disposal, found the power of art to be a catalyst for change in their life. These men have received diplomas, gotten college degrees, they've written books, they've connected through so many outside organizations using art. And it makes me realize that I have no excuse. I owe it to them to continue this work and to never be cynical or complacent, but to find new ways to connect these stories to new audience members. I'm encouraged by creating beautiful works of public art and in the process, seeing like-minded organizations come together, providing resources to people. This ensures a long life for the work of art and that the impact of our work doesn't end once the brush is put down. Thank you.